Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
Coming up today on The Story.
I didn't understand it. Evan wasn't diagnosed until he hit 15. When he was 4, I was told he had Asperger's tendencies, but back then there was no guidebook. You were probably made to feel like more an inept parent than you were shown how to parent a child with autism.
The Story.
G'day, I'm Jimmy Colfax. Welcome to The Story. Well, today, Sandra Gurney will be joining us via the telephone from her family farm located in a small town called Charleville in southwestern Queensland. Sandra will share her journey to faith in Jesus and about some of the challenges she faces having 3 children with Autism Spectrum Disorder. That and more is coming up today as Sandra has a chat with Karen Hunt.
Sandy, tell us where you were born and what life was like for you as little Sandy.
I was born in Ingham. Mum and Dad were up there, and she had to stay in hospital until I was born. And then as soon as I was born, Mum and Dad had to go back down to Brisbane because my grandmother was not well, and she passed away. So it was a hard year, the year I was born, but you know, the good thing was that I was born. So she said it was always a happy year, you know, in that respect.
So you grew up in Brisbane?
I grew up in Brisbane on the north side, around the hills area. It was Bunyaville many years ago. It's Everton Hills, you know.
Yes,
so,
very familiar.
That was my playground. Went to school at Everton Park Primary, and that was the same school my father went to. Okay. You know, it was in the family sort of thing, my father and his brothers and sisters.
So what about for you, brothers and sisters? How many?
Yes, I'm one of 5, so I have 1 brother and 3 sisters. So.
And where do you fit?
I'm number 4.
Number 4.
Good old number 4, you know. I introduce myself that way sometimes. Oh, hi, I'm number 4.
Oh, true.
Oh, just for fun, you know.
Now, I know you like horses. Other than horses, what else were you into when you were young?
When I was in high school, I started gymnastics, and that was a big love for me. I loved gymnastics, and that was pretty much my life from high school on. I used to compete. Used to compete at Launton and Chandler, and I did that till I was about 19, and then I guess I got too old for it. And I got married when I was 19, so, you know, it was time for the next chapter of my life.
And tell me, was faith a part of your earlier years, those child and teenage years?
In my younger years, when I was in primary school, it was. Mum and Dad didn't go to church very much, but they always made sure that it was an option for us. Some of the values that Dad instilled within us, I say, Dad used to say, you know, never let an argument go past sunset. And they'd say, that's in the Bible, you know, and I never knew that, but they were always things that were instilled upon us. But I used to go to church at Mitchelton. My auntie and uncle, they used to go to church a lot. They had 2 girls, they were twins, and they were my best friends when I was a kid growing up. So I would always sleep over their place on the weekend, and I would go to church with Relly and Chrissy, my twins, twinnies.
So these are the cousins?
These are my cousins, yeah. And I would also do Pathfinders. It was called Pathfinders then, or youth group. When I got older, then I did youth group at the church just down the road. There was a Wesleyan Methodist church, and with that Wesleyan Methodist church, my grandmother's brother built the first little chapel that was there. So it sort of had a sentiment in our family. Yeah. Then they built another church, and then they built an even bigger church as I got older. And my gran loved that church, and I would go to church with Grandma too because I was Grandma's girl, and my grandma lived with us. She lived in a flat downstairs, so I would go to church with Grandma. But I don't think I understood it. Like, I loved going, but I don't think I really understood it at that point.
And is that something that you've grown to come to understand later in life? Yes.
When I was up at Gilbert River, it wasn't until it was nearly time for us to leave there. I used to let the kids go on a Christian bush camp. It was on the Ainsley River, and they would hold it every June, July holidays. And it's a beautiful place there. That Ainsley River is just a gorgeous place. And it was the one day, my husband works very, very hard, and it was the one day I'd say, come on, let's take the kids and we'll drop them off at camp, and they would stay there for a week. And through this camp, I met a man called Michael Rafferty and his wife Wendy. They would look after the kids for a week, and they would, teach the children about Bible lessons and that sort of thing. And it wasn't until we were nearly leaving, the kids did that for nearly 4 years. But they just had so much fun there and such beautiful people. And they'd have another man, Curly, he was from Babinda, and he would bring some children out from Babinda so they could experience the camping and that. And I guess you could say this was like my tap on the shoulder from God, or this is when it became more apparent to me. Was I got there this day and I said to Mr. Rafferty, I said, it feels so warm here. It feels like I'm being hugged. And that was like the first thing. And then I had to take Evan back. Well, he had to catch a plane to boarding school, so I had to drive him the 5.5 hours to Cairns.
Wow.
And my husband was with me this time. And his plane was delayed, and we had his younger brother with us at that point. And just as we got to the airport, he vomited in the car. Then when we got to the airport and then the plane was delayed, and what we didn't realise at the time was Talon had autism, and it was just a really, really stressful time. Like, I spent most of the time running back to the toilet because he just felt like he was going to be sick all the time. So even though he wasn't, but because of the autism, it was just giving him mixed messages, We got Ev on the plane, but I felt like I hadn't been able to say goodbye to him properly because it was just a funny time. Like, it was a bit stressful for me, I guess. And then we did our shopping like we normally do, and then we headed straight back home. So we did it all in a day. But the whole way home, I kept thinking, I really feel like I need to see Mr. Rafferty right now. This was before we got into the driveway. I don't know what it was, just something kept telling me, I really feel like I need to see Mr. Rafferty right now. Anyway, we drive in the driveway, and here is Mr. Rafferty, and I see his camper van, and he'd obviously pulled in there for the night. And I just think that's another, I think it's God saying, well, you said you needed to see him, here he is.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. Isn't there something so special about the closeness of God in the beauty of his nature and creation?
Absolutely, absolutely. How we're taught these things, how he teaches us this. I'm so grateful that he's opened my heart to all of this. It's a wonderful experience.
You told us that you married at the age of 19. You married Darren. So fill us in. How did you meet this young man? And, what happened from there?
Well, he was a friend of my brother's. My poor brother, I feel sorry for him. He would bring these friends home. And, well, he brought Darren home this one day. And I don't know how I knew. I just knew I was going to marry him. First time I set eyes on him.
Really?
I knew I was going to marry him. He's just a sweet, good man. Very good man.
So you hijacked the friendship?
Yes. I call him the sweetest man on earth. I always call him that because he's such a good man. He's a good husband. I'm just so lucky to have this sweet man in my life,
And what was he doing at the time?
At the time, he was welding. He was a welder, and he would make security gates. Darren grew up in Enoggera, and many years ago, his grandfather ran a dairy from there. It's funny, one of my aunties, she talks about going to get milk from the dairy, and it's been around for a long time, but then he moved the dairy up to Woodford, and so that's where Darren used to spend his holidays and things like that. So, yeah, then the big fella did farming, and
the big fella.
We got married.
The big fella, Darren.
Yes, about the big fella, a.k.a. Darren, my husband, sweetest man on earth.
Did you imagine that you'd become a farmer's wife and live, out in the bush?
If you had told me many years ago that I would be a farmer's wife and that I know the stuff that I know now, I would have said you're a bit of a fibber flobber.
Really?
The things that good man has taught me, he doesn't realise how great he is. He doesn't realise how much he has helped me. I have to be honest. Darren is not a church person. Yes, he went to church when he was young. His mum is still very connected to a church at Mitchelton, and we were married there. We were the third generation to be married there. His his grandmother, his mother and father, and then he and I were married there, and our children were baptised there because it was so significant.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess he was raised with the same beliefs as I was. You know, he went to church and he went to youth group and he did all those things too. But in his older years, it's not been very prominent. But he doesn't stop me.
You're listening to The Story. Today, Karen Hunt is chatting with Sandra Gurney on the telephone from her family farm in Charleville, Queensland. Sandra has been sharing about her journey to faith in Jesus. Next, we'll hear more of her story, including some of the challenges she faces having 3 children with Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD. That and more when we return.
The Story. If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Colfax, and this is The Story. We're continuing with Karen Hunt chatting with Sandra Gurney on the telephone from her home in Charleville, Queensland. Before the break, we heard Sandra share her life journey and how she became a Christian. Now, we'll find out what happened next in her life and about some of the challenges she faces having 3 children with Autism Spectrum Disorder.
Tell us about your early married life. So where did you head to first?
Well, we moved from the north side to Glasshouse Mountains.
Uh-huh.
We lived in just a rented house for about 6 months or so, and then we got a house on one of the properties. It was a macadamia property, and Darren was working his way up through the company because they had 5 farms, so they had they did have 6, but they sold one, and they were left with 5, so we had 38,000 trees to look after.
Okay, so where did you go to next?
We were on that property for 10 years. He worked for that company for 10 years, and then he left that company, and ultimately left that property, and then we moved to just a rented house in town, and we were there for about 3 years, and in that time he did the sugarcane harvest every year.
And you had kids by this stage?
Yes, we had 2 children at that point, Evan and Dallas, my beautiful babies, and then I fell pregnant with Miss J, number 3.
Number 3 of 5.
Yes.
But you mentioned to me off air about your atopic pregnancy. That was like after child number 2, is that right?
Yes, it was quite a scary time because I nearly died from that because I was bleeding into my stomach and the hospital didn't realise. They'd sent me for a scan. Yeah, it was just a scary time, and I can remember it took me a long time to fall pregnant after that because I couldn't make the decision to fall. I couldn't, because of the atopic pregnancy, it had scared me.
Yeah, it would do.
So I couldn't decide, and I can remember talking to someone one day and just saying, I wish somebody would make this decision because I just can't, I was too scared it was going to happen again. And then I accidentally fell pregnant with Miss J.
Oh, nothing's by accident.
I know, big fella doesn't like saying she was an accident. And I say, well, it doesn't mean I don't love her any less. I'd love her even more.
Yeah. Tell us, Sandy, you've got 5 children all up now. Now, 3 of these have autism. What are the ages of your kids and how are you going with all that?
I have my oldest boy, Evan. He's 19. I have Torin, who's 11. She's ASD. And then I have Talon Paul Thomas, who is 7, and he has ASD as well.
That's quite a handful.
Yeah, it was. I didn't understand it. Evan wasn't diagnosed until he hit 15. When he was 4, I was told he had Asperger's tendencies, but nobody tells you to, go and get him diagnosed. There's no guidebook for autism at all. There are many books on autism, but back then there was no guidebook. You were probably made to feel like more an inept parent, then you were shown how to parent a child with autism.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't until Talon was 3, or almost 3, and we were up at the mango farm at the time, and we usually come down to Brisbane for holidays with family, and we took the children to Movie World. It had been a very harassing day. Talon had just about sent us to tears. He was just so overwhelmed because, I mean, I can look at it now and go, well, visually it was overwhelming. It was probably too noisy for him. It was all these things. But back then I had no understanding of autism, really. Even though I had an older child with it, I didn't know enough to do the research on it. I didn't know anything about it at all. But see, when I was younger, when Evan was younger, I had postnatal depression as well. So I was just trying to get my mind right, and that took a long time to do, you know. And it wasn't until Tal come along that's when I really started to understand what autism was and how to work with it. And probably I've learnt more about autism in the last 4 years than I had in the whole 15 years with Evan.
I would not be surprised if there are others listening right now who just might be in a similar situation as you, with 1 or 2 or 3 children in, a similar phase of life. What kind of encouragement can you give to those parents right now?
One thing that I've found is that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Seeking out other parents, talking to other parents is helpful, and going to seminars, that was something that really helped me. The best advice I could offer for people is to talk to other parents. Get yourself into a support group if you can find one, or if there's one within your area. I help to admin a Facebook page called Asperger's Parent Connect with Sally Tebow. Sally's been very encouraging, and we actually brought Sally out here to Charleville. Sally and another lady called Chris Barrett. They used to do seminars called Food, Family and Asperger's, it used to be. And it was through that and meeting Sally and Chris, and we looked at diet, we looked at, there are a lot of things out there, and it's just knowing how to navigate your way through that, through that path, which can be quite rocky sometimes.
So again, there's a Facebook page, Asperger's Parent Connect. Any particular websites that you'd like to inform our listeners about?
Sue Larkey was a good one for me when I first started out. Sue Larkey, and a book that was a really good help for me was Temple Grandin, Thinking in Pictures. That was an excellent one to help me to understand how the children process and, just how their brains work a little bit. And they were good people who helped me.
Do you have a strong Christian support network around you, able to help and encourage you?
One thing that I have found a little hard here at the moment is I haven't found a church yet, but I think that is coming because we've only been here a couple of years, but I started going to Bible study, so that's been helpful. Another lady and I, who is also a Christian, created a support group for special needs children. We called it Charleville Special Needs Support Group. And so we've sort of created a little network of parents who, we help each other in our, when we're having a bad day or, we're there for each other and give each other a coffee. So that has been my network. But I have been going to the Christian Outreach Centre. I went to a night there and listened to a speaker who was so powerful, Leah Matthews. She was so powerful, listening to her, and that gave me strength. I went to this church and listened to this lady talk, and the next morning my daughter said to me, "I'd like to go back there, Mum, for breakfast." And I didn't quite understand what was going on at the time, and she called us forward and she said, put your hands up to God, and because he was already working in my life at that time. And I don't know what happened, but she was talking and she blew on me, and it was like in my heart, it felt like my heart exploded, and I fell backwards with the force, and I've never had that happen before.
The force of a breath.
Yes, it was just amazing. And that's why I stay here in this town, because it's given me strength, this beautiful little town, though I'm not connected to a church. When things weren't going great, it was the church who gave us a house to stay in for a month until the house that we were supposed to go in was ready, and they gave it to us rent-free, and we did give them money when we left because we were so grateful for their help in our time of need. And I know a couple of ladies that I go to school with, a few of the mums are with the Christian Outreach Centre. So I think that's coming. I think that a path will show itself soon.
Yeah. Well, I hope so, for your sake. I mean, you definitely need to be with other like-minded women and like-minded families as much as possible. But the Spirit of God, the breath of God, I hope and pray for you, for Darren, for your 5 kids, that the Spirit of God will be alive and strong to guide you and protect you and lead you on in all good things, hey?
Yes, if I haven't seen it working in my life now, I think I would have to be really blind, because I can just see it working every day here in Charleville. I've seen it work here, and that's why I like here. It's such a beautiful little town, and such supportive, good people. They're all around me.
Well, God bless the folk there in Charleville in Queensland as well. And Sandy, thanks so much for your time, and thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
That was Karen Hunt chatting with Sandra Gurney, who joined us from her home on the family farm in Charleville, Queensland. It was great to hear how God has been working in her life and how he's been helping her overcome some of the challenges involved in having children with Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD. As you heard, she mentioned one very practical bit of advice for other parents in a similar situation is to get connected with other parents in a support group. As the Bible says, we are to bear one another's burdens. It's always important to remember that we are never alone in whatever challenges we face in life. Our Heavenly Father is always there for us, and there are definitely other people going through similar challenges. If you'd like someone to pray about any struggles you may be going through at this very moment, our prayer line is 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. And we'd love to pray for you on that number, 1-800-772-936. 936. Well, thanks for joining us for Sandra's story. I'm Jimmy Colfax, encouraging you to share your story with someone today.
Next time on The Story.
We had to move from one neighbor to another neighbor, and that neighbor had me and my grandmother and few other people in his house for a week. But by that time, my house was already demolished. We had no home. And then it was announced in the country that the killing had stopped, but it wasn't true. It was a lie.
Frida is the author of the book Chosen to Die, Destined to Live, about her miraculous escape from the Rwandan genocide in 1994. Frida will give a first-hand account of how she survived and how her faith in God has helped her to heal and forgive. All that and more next time.
The Story. Just another way Vision is connecting faith to life.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.